It is 10 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. I know we tend to have smaller crowds on the morning sessions, but I get it. People are teaching. That is the challenge when you try to uh, accommodate different time zones and everything. You're going to get a mix of people in here. For those who are new to us, I just want to welcome you to our Tackling Challenges with Distance Learning series. This is super informal. This basically began way back at the start of COVID, where we started just to form a professional learning community to dig into some of these ideas that come up. The community keeps growing, and we're happy to support as many people as possible in this time. So the big requests that have been coming in is all around hybrid learning, because schools have been looking at finding some ways to return to have some people in person and some people online. There's different models that I'm seeing as I'm contacting districts, or districts are contacting me, and so each model brings some challenges, and I think it's something that it's going to take a while to unpack all these things. Good morning, Beth. Good to see you. And so what we'll do today is, this is part two. So in our first session, which by the way, all the sessions are recorded. When I share the recording of this, it's all on the website, but basically I'll drop the link in so you can have the copies of or access to all the recordings. In our last session, though, we talked about sort of the model that I use, where we have live people. We have people who are online live, and we have people who are in person live, and we're teaching both at the same time. That's the model I believe is best for a number of reasons, as long as people are given time to learn that model. It's not something that we can do where you can just throw it to teachers and say, all right, teach both groups of kids the same way and figure it out. It takes a little bit of learning. However, I do find that once people understand the basics of it, it works better than trying to plan one event for the kids who are in person and one event for the kids who are online. You end up doing double duty as a teacher. And I think that's harder for people. So if we can actually get to a place where we can plan and assess and facilitate and all that, one session where teachers just have to think about how do we draw in the students who are online, I think it's going to work well. So some of the questions today that keep popping up for me, there are two in particular that I think we'll dig into, and I'm going to open the floor up for anyone who has ideas related to any of these challenges. But one of the ones is around planning. Like, how do you as a teacher, or as a coach who's supporting teachers, or as an administrator who's supporting teachers, what's the planning process to make sure you're getting everything set for both audiences? So I have some things to share with you today, which will help you. I have a template for planning. I also have an infographic I made that kind of highlights my process with this, that you can share with your teachers and help people with that. But we'll dig into the planning piece of it. And then the other piece that has come up a lot is, how do you manage breakout rooms? So if you have kids who are in person and they're working in small groups, and you have kids who are online and they're working in small groups, how in the world do you keep track of everybody? That's the other one I wanted to dig into today. In 30 minutes, it goes by quick. So I think we're going to have our work cut out for us with both of these. But let's start with planning. First of all, just in the chat, I'd like to get a sense of the audience. Who here is either in or is moving toward a hybrid model? Just put yes in the chat or no in the chat to let me know kind of where you are. Yeah, it looks like that's going to be like the popular one. Yeah. All right. And if you're not, like, it's okay, because the things that I talk about, the nice thing, this is what I like about my hybrid model, is that with my model, it's the most flexible, because the way you plan for it is, if everyone's fully remote, then what you've done works, because you've planned to accommodate students who are online in a meaningful way. So every one of the strategies just works. You got everyone online. Likewise, if you go full in person, you've planned for that in-person experience. So it's designed that way so that you can kind of adapt either way. So if you're not doing hybrid, or not even considering hybrid, we're still going to cover stuff today that's going to be applicable to full remote. And I suspect, just knowing the numbers, we're going to see people start to go hybrid and then pull back. Right now, a school that I've been going to and training people in hybrid learning have already closed and gone to full remote, because cases are starting to go up in that area. So I think this is the dance we're going to play until we have a vaccine. So let's try to design a model and support a model that allows the most amount of flexibility. Because I think teachers and school administrators and parents and everybody is get a little tired of like every few weeks there's like an email of like the new system and now we're going to do this and here's the new thing that we're learning and new procedures. And I think what's helpful is if we can have a plan that has the wiggle room built in, I think we're going to be good to go. So let's jump in with planning right now. And I'm going to just toss it to the floor right now. So people are welcome to unmute their mics or drop in the chat. If you're planning and implementing hybrid learning right now, what are some of your planning strategies? What are the things that you're finding work for you or have worked for your teachers to make the process easier so that our teachers are not spending 12 hours a day doing lesson planning and stuff? This is the thing we're trying to do is think about the mental well-being of all of our teachers and not overworking them where they're spending their entire day planning this. So what are some strategies that have been working for you? And then I'll share some of my my tips and tricks as well. Go open the floor. Who would like to share some things that are working?
Hi, Mike. I know that I've been planning a lot of online Jamboards and Google Slides. I support kindergarten students and teachers, so we're trying to create the same kind of activities that they would have done hands-on manipulatives, but with virtual, so that if they have a student face-to-face and a student at home, they can assign that Jamboard and two students could be working together. One of them could be in the classroom with the physical manipulatives, and the other one could be at home with the virtual manipulatives.
Excellent. Yeah, that I love that idea because it's like you're making that one jam board, but it works for either audience. So that you're not, it's not like you have to do two separate kind of platforms there. And you're also, what I like about that too, Karina, is the benefit of having kids in person, if we're safely allowed to do that, is you do have access to those materials, and we want kids to be able to touch them and to move them around if you're doing any work with that, and versus relegating everyone to virtual manipulatives. Not that there's anything wrong with virtual manipulatives, but we know the tactile nature of those tools helps. So that feels like you're getting the best of both worlds without having to do double duty in a way with that planning. I notice Christine put in the chat there hyperlinks, like slides and stuff, like queuing up hyperlinks to make it easier to access things, which also I think is a really good tip. What else you got, people?
We're using Swivel and Zoom to try and we have most of our kids in person, so a few remote. And so we're trying to include those remotes as a Zoom link on the front board while everyone is in person.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. And how, so what are some of the strategies? So as teachers are planning for that, like when they're doing their lesson planning, since most are in person, I'm assuming that they're planning as if they're doing in-person teaching. What's been helpful for them to authentically draw in the students who are online? Have you found things that have been working?
Well, we're sending home manipulative kits and all the printouts and everything. So we're trying as much as possible to focus on in-person and include them. And then we have one-on-one check-ins, but
Excellent.
it's tricky.
It is tricky, and it's one of those things that not every big district. I know smaller districts have. It seems to be easier for them logistically to put material packets together that families either drive through and pick up at times, or they're mailed if districts can afford the cost. With major districts, I know it's a little trickier with the logistics there, but I think that whole idea of like aim for the best, most inclusive model you can in these cases to support the students who are online. And if like the physical manipulatives are not possible, then you can work with virtual ones or other kinds of ways to accommodate that. I feel like that's a good workflow with that. I know people have been successful with it. Any other ideas that are that we could share with the group? Again, all of us are smarter than one of us, in the words of Graham Fletcher. So I always like to bring in other people's ideas.
Mike, this is Christine.
Hey, Christine.
How are you? I know Karina shared about Jamboards and some other things, but I recently was teaching a 6th grade class, basically, in our elementary school, and we've been using escape rooms and grouping the kids where some are in the building, in the brick and mortar, and some were virtual. And so they were able to connect with each other that way. And depending on the groups, you were able to make them smaller or larger and, kind of manage their behaviors as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I love the fact that you can, like, that sounds like a nice, engaging way to authentically include people. And I suspect that also, because of escape rooms and the nature of having like an initiative challenge, right? It reminds me of my Outward Bound days, like where people had to collaborate and problem solve together. Like, there's no better way to build community. So are you finding that that's also helping to bridge the divide between the online and in-person students?
With some kids, yes. I mean,
Okay.
we're finding that a lot of the kids really enjoy, they miss that connection, especially the ones that are at home.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really good for them to feel like they belonged. But then it really gets hectic in the building, because if the kids don't have the headsets on and
Jamie, do you remember anything from last week, perhaps?
it makes it really difficult to hear what's going on. And so that's kind of one of our hiccups, is trying to perfect that piece. But the kids have really enjoyed, I mean, kids after the class who didn't break out or escape would do it on their own and then send me their certificate.
Nice. And you bring up a good point, though. That's the one thing with hybrid learning, and it happens for us on campus too. Like, I think I've shared images of our model at Mount Holyoke, but let me just show like a clip of us. Like, so we have like, this is a vision or version of one of our breakout rooms on campus. And you'll notice that we actually go out in the hall. So because in the main classroom, when we got a lot of people talking, it does elevate the volume. So we go out in the hallway. And even then, if you were to stand out this, where we do this, there's 3 floors and there's this big open sort of balcony area. And you can just sort of hear like the energy and the noise. Because it's spread out enough, it doesn't disrupt the process. But if you were an observer watching, it sounds confusing if you were like in the big room listening to it all. But if you're actually, once you're with a small group, you just kind of hear that small group, but the noise kind of reverberates around. And I know with the pandemic, it's much harder. You can't send everyone in the hallway to spread out, so you're limited in the space. So as people are thinking about integrating small group work with with students who are online and bringing them in, that's going to be a challenge you're going to need to navigate, which is how do you do that and keep the volume at a place where you're not getting interference, and then people can't hear each other, which can be tricky. And if people are wondering, like, some suggested strategies, so one of the schools that I'm working with, we found that having one iPad that's in the classroom that gets assigned a small group, and so we'll have a couple of online students show up on that iPad, and then we give it to 1 or 2 students who are in person. There's just one hybrid group in the room, and that seems to bring the noise level down. The rest of the online groups work as completely online breakout rooms, which we'll get to as one of our other challenges, that challenge of how do you monitor breakout rooms? Because once as you know, when you enable breakout rooms, what happens is if you have all online breakout rooms, they're not visible unless you're actually in those rooms. So we need to think about, like, what does that mean if you're in the class monitoring kids who are there physically, which means you're responsible for their safety and well-being, right? That there's a whole layer of just being in person that you have to keep an eye on. And you may have a hybrid breakout room. So you've got one group that's on an iPad that you can see, so you're able to monitor that. But you may have 2 or 3 or even 4 other breakout rooms that, unless you join that room on your device, you don't know what's going on in there, unless, like, you've got some other monitoring tools, like they're working on a Jamboard that you can see on the screen or something. So we're going to unpack some of that too. I've got some good ideas that will work for monitoring that, but it does raise some issues as you're doing breakout rooms, because ideally what we're trying to do is if we want to recreate that authentic in-class experience for our online students, we want to engage them in that small group work as much as we can. And so it would be in our best interest to kind of navigate this in a way where we can actually have a good lens on what they're doing and make them feel like they're included, in that they're not just stuck in a breakout room, just working independently until I finally call them all back to the whole group. So we'll move into that in just a little bit. Any other thoughts or ideas on planning or strategies for blending these 2 audiences together? So let me share quickly so this is a workflow that I've come up with. I'm going to drop the link. I made a PDF um, of it. So oh, someone was asking in the chat if they can record the session. So I'm recording it right now. So I'll share the link and it's publicly available. So that's if there's no need for anyone else to record it that way. Because I'll actually edit it and it'll be a better production value because I'll be able to cut between speaker view and gallery view and things. So it'll just be ready in like a day or two. Just depends on like when I get a pocket of time to edit. But yeah, it's totally free and available, and you're always welcome to just share it with anyone you want. This is all about helping as many people as possible. I don't really care who has access to it. The more the merrier, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to drop in here the workflow document. So this you're also welcome to share with people. This I developed based on the way since I've been doing hybrid learning since 2013. This is how I design a graduate program. This is how I design my classes, webinars, you name it. I'm going to keep doing this strategy. And I thought, let me make it really obvious and transparent to people. So let me, of course, I had it queued up on my other thing. Here we go. So I'm going to drop this as a PDF right in the chat. Oops, let me make sure it's everybody. Send to everyone. Okay. And distance learning workflow. There we go. Okay, so you'll have it in just a second. I broke it up on the slides here, so it's actually easier for you to see. But you can all open that and share it and do whatever you want. So this is what I do essentially for this work. First of all, I start with the planning, and the planning I do is I basically tell everyone plan like you're doing face to face. The power of teachers and students is that we all know instinctively how to work in a classroom. Like we don't have to like rethink like how like I know there's some pandemic things like social distancing we got to like navigate, but in general we're in our home turf. So I tell people plan the way you would if everyone was in person as much as possible, because that's going to keep your teaching practices in line with your beliefs and everything. You're not going to have to think about all these adaptations right from the beginning. I've heard so many people say that when you plan hybrid, you should plan for online first. I disagree wholeheartedly. I've been doing this enough to tell you, when you plan for online, I actually find that you inadvertently reduce the quality of the in-person experience. It's just something I've seen from experience. That's not a standard thing, by the way. I just want to, in full like transparency, there's no general rule with this. Like everybody is free to do whatever they want to do. So just know I'm sharing my opinion based on some years of experience, but it's not the law or anything. But this is how I like to do it. From here, once I have my plan, is I then just have a critical eye. Really quickly, I scan to think, what can't my students who are online do the way I've designed it right now? And that kind of gets to like what Karina was talking about. So if they were doing something with manipulatives, and then she's thinking, all right, they may not have access to manipulatives. So like, what do I do then? So I could use like Karina's idea of having virtual manipulatives. I forgot the person who suggested the material packets, but maybe that's the thing I do. I start to think about whatever modifications I need to make, but I try to limit those as much as possible. I'm a big fan, I think you all know, of going lower tech to make things easier. I want lower cognitive load on people to have to worry about technology. I want them to have their mental capacities focused on the lesson. So I'll modify things based on access. So when I think about modifications, what I'm talking about is like, what are the ways that I can make the classroom accessible for the students? So anything that I need to do to make that modification, I'm going to do that. Oftentimes it's just like having students have their cameras on, but just down on their work so I can monitor their work in progress. We talked about that a couple of sessions ago. It could be having like Jamboards or Google Slides or other things. Any of those things are ways that we begin to build those modifications in. So now, once you've got that in place, this is where I start to think about the production value. So what this is if you were putting a live TV show together, if you were doing a play, if any of you've done anything where there's a performance, an event, a banquet, whatever it is, you know that you plan out the flow. The idea with the flow is you're thinking of the order of events and the things that will make the transitions easier. This is the one thing that I feel is like a little bit newer for teachers, because teachers know how to do lesson planning. The flow, like the production flow, is a little bit different. This doesn't have to be overwhelming. I'm going to show you an example of my sheet in just a second. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. But what this does is essentially, I want you to think about anything that you can do as a teacher that takes the nitty gritty sort of details of the technology out of your head and put it somewhere. If you're familiar with like the whole idea of working memory, we as humans can only hold on to so much information in our working memory. Sometimes they say like there's Miller's idea that we can hold on to 7 pieces of information plus or minus 2. The more current research actually says it's around like 4 to 5 pieces of information that we can hold on to. So, as a teacher, your working memory means that also includes your observations of students, your like of their actual work, of their disposition, of their behaviors. It's also holding on to the lesson and the sequence of the lesson, like all those elements. Those are pieces that are within your working memory. If you add into that microphones, cameras, breakout rooms, where you're standing in the classroom and are you visible, all of those extra technology things that you add and try to hold on to in your working memory, what will happen is you end up losing pieces of information. And so that's where teachers start to feel really struggled in this place, is because we can't, as humans, hold on to all of that. And so what we're asking teachers to do, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, is if they're doing hybrid learning, they're hosting a live TV show, and they are the star of it, and they are the director of it, and the producer, and the technical manager, and they're like everything. When you have a team of people for a live TV show, the teacher's doing that. And I still advocate for this model, even though there's a lot for people to think about, because if we can streamline it, this is where the big ideas come in. If we can get the tech to not actually be in the forefront of teachers' minds, and we do that by offloading anything we can into some kind of physical form that we don't have to hold on to anymore. This is a strategy that works. I mean, even if we think about like math learning or something like that, if you give a student a mental math problem and you keep adding layers to it, it's going to be hard for them to hold on to all those pieces. But if you allow them to jot down some information along the way, so like if they get a partial sum or a partial product and they can jot the answer down, they're able to actually manage a lot more information because they've offloaded some of the data from their working memory. This is what we're going to do when I talk about workflow. I'm talking about offloading the tech aspect of the work somewhere physical so the teacher can glance and move on and be able to handle the lesson. The next thing with this is to actually do planning the development of the actual workspace. So in the classroom, I get in there in the morning and I have everything in a consistent workflow for me. So I have papers where they're supposed to go. I've got my system for sanitizing materials that are in the space. I know right where all my material is that I need. I don't need to think about it because it's all set up in place. Likewise, once I have the physical space work, is I prepare the digital space. So this is where you queue everything up. So what I'll do is, like for a lesson or a period, I will have a window open and I will have all the tabs of any things that my students are going to need, so that it's just ready to go. What I don't want to have to do in the remote environment is stop and have to find things and scroll through things and do a search. I want everything ready to go so I'm able to do that. This is a really helpful way that we can do this work. Now, let me show you when I talked about my lesson plan, and I'm going to give you the link to it right now. But this is my lesson planning template. I'll go ahead and drop that in right now. So this is what it looks like. It's a simple Google form. I mean, it's like there's no groundbreaking thing here. So what you see, I have the time just because I like to time things out. The activity, I put as little information in here as possible because I've been teaching a long time, so I don't need to spell out step by step. I'm not writing student teacher lesson plans here. What I'm doing is like giving myself a rough idea of what's supposed to happen when. And then the workflow is what I call technology and material needs. This is where I put in any information about what link I need to send in the chat, or what materials need to be available, what Jamboard I'm going to grab. This is an example of what it looks like completed. This is an actual one. So this is for one of my classes in grad school that I teach, where we're working with base 5. You'll notice that the activity section here, this is the actual lesson plan. I barely have any information here. I don't need to spell this out because this is just for me. I know what task instructions and clarifying questions. I know what that means. I know Jared. I know what the Jared thing is in my lesson. You don't, but I do. And that's all I need to know. I've spelled out here a little bit more detail, mostly just to kind of model for you like what this would look like. I've been doing this enough times now where I don't even need to spell a lot of this stuff out. And but what I find is like, if you're new to this work, what's happening when you're new to this work is you're going to basically, if you're new to it, you're spending all your working memory thinking about those tech details. But if you also understand like learning, so what happens with working memory is with experience, you begin to attach these new ideas to existing knowledge, which then goes in your long-term memory. And once you've had enough experience, you'll find that a lot of these things you don't need to think about as much anymore because it's just part of your understanding of this space. It's no different than when you're student teaching and you're writing those arduous lesson plans. You don't do that for your whole career because eventually you've internalized all of that stuff. So it's just part of your way of being when you're a teacher. So this is what we're doing here. I spell it out a little bit more in the case of like when I'm new to this, but every one of these things, the links, the flow, all of that is basically now allowing me to have brain space to focus on the lesson, the students, assessing, all of that, because I'm not needing to worry about the technology. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the chat. You'll have it's going to prompt you to make a copy of it. And folks who are watching the recording, I'm going to put the links to this right below the video. So on the website, you'll see it there. You can just go ahead and click on it. So there's the first link right there. And if someone didn't get the link to the, it looks like someone said they didn't see the PDF. If you're on like a Chromebook or something, there might be an issue with that. I'll drop the PDF for my infographic on the website, so you can just download it right from there. That way, and maybe I'll even attach it to the email when I send it out with the recording. So I'm going to pause for any questions right now about this process, my lesson plan sort of flow process. Any questions, comments, thoughts before we look at just monitoring breakout rooms? It's pretty self-explanatory. I think the thing that overwhelms people in the beginning is that it does seem like there's so much for us to think about with the technology that it's easy to kind of get burdened with it. But you'll find that like once you develop this routine, the real goal of getting comfortable in the space is helping people understand how not to tax our working memory. Like if I can teach you anything about remote learning, whether you're fully remote or hybrid, and actually it goes for face-to-face teaching anyway, the more we don't tax our working memory as teachers, and the more we don't tax our students' working memory. So the more organized we are, the more things are written out and spelled out with graphic organizers, all of these things. It makes it easier for folks to focus on the important elements of the lesson and less on the details. It just makes me realize that maybe we should do a session 2 around distractions, because I think about our students who are at home, my kids in particular. So in full transparency, my soon to be 14-year-old, I came up behind him during remote learning. He had everything on. From a quick observation, it looks like he's fully on. And then I noticed his phone's out, which he's not supposed to have. And he's playing Among Us with his friends. They're all playing Among Us in class. And I realized so we've got to figure out some ways to work with that. Let's make that our next session, is like, how do we deal with like focus and distractions, both for us and for our students? But really quickly, just at the end, we may go a little over time, and again, it's recorded. So if you can't see the rest of it today, you can watch the recording. But let me talk about the other challenge which came up, which is monitoring breakout rooms. So for this, I'm going to give a couple of quick things. So what I find when I'm teaching in hybrid settings live, one of the best things I do is I use my phone as a participant in the room. So I log my phone into the Zoom room, and then you'll notice with the, if I zoom in here, so in here, you'll see on there the little prompt at the top where it says you've been assigned co-host for the meeting. So I give my phone co-hosting rights. And what this allows me to do is not be tethered to my laptop. So now I basically have access to all the breakout rooms in my back pocket. So as I walk around the classroom, I have this in my pocket. And the other thing I do is I wear, this is something that I know not everyone has, but if you are able to even go to Walmart or Target or whatever and get some form of a Bluetooth earbud or headset or whatever you need, this is really helpful. So I plop this right in my ear. This is synced to my phone. So I've got it on my phone now. I am able to then go to a breakout room. So I can say, visit breakout group 1. And as I'm walking around the physical classroom, I can monitor the physical classroom. I can listen to, or even have my phone out and watch the breakout group 1. So I'm able to listen to them. And because I'm co-host, I can move between the breakout rooms. So I'm able to go from 1 to 2 to 3. I can monitor each breakout room. Some people are probably wondering, like, well, how do you handle like the noise in the room and the noise coming through here? When I'm listening to a group in person, I just pull this out. I listen to the group in person. I'm still technically present in this room. They don't know that I pulled my earbud out. I talk with the group there. My phone's on mute, so they don't hear me. And then I pop this back in as I walk around the room. And when I need to give them my attention, then I just, here's one other tip is I position myself in the classroom so that I'm able to look at my phone, but that I can write, like the physical students are in front of me this way. So I'm able to also have a lens on the class. So I'm never having my back to the class. So I can monitor a breakout room. And if I see movement, if like 2 kids are too close to each other, I can just quickly say, hey, remember 6 feet and whatever I need to do. This has been really helpful. And it gives you the ability to monitor the breakout rooms that way. The other one, and this is a little bananas, but it's bear with me. I've done this and this works as well. This requires multiple devices, but if you're able to get your hands on some things, this is what I do at the college sometimes. And what you'll see is I have basically our desktop. And then I did this a little bit more. I've added some extra things, but the iPads that you see there are each in a different breakout room. So I have like on this, like on the far left, that might be breakout group 1. Then breakout group 2 is here, the second one, and then 3 is over here. These other ones are actually just the main meeting. So I have 3 breakout rooms that are happening right now. Each one is on a different iPad. And what that allows me to do is I'm able to like, I can position those and then see what's going on in the rooms and watch them. If I want to listen in on any of them, what I need to do is just turn the volume up on whichever one I want to listen to, and then I turn it down when I'm not using it. Because they're in different breakout rooms, there's no audio feedback. You don't have to worry about that, and it's been helpful for me to do that. And you can do it for as many devices as you have. So it might be your phone. It might be if you've got an old phone, like we have this old junky iPhone that's still around. It works on Wi-Fi. So I just download Zoom on that. So I've got an old like iPhone, maybe it's a 5. I don't know what it is. It's like, but it's an old one. I have my new iPhone, and then I might have an iPad, and those are that helps me monitor breakout rooms that way. But this way, you're able to be present for your online students and present for your in-person students. And the other thing we have to remember, and this is a funny thing that I've noticed with remote learning, is I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed with the newness of this that we forget like what it's like when we're fully in person. So I get a lot of questions of like, how do you make sure you see every breakout room in every lesson? And I'll say, do you meet every reading group every day? Do you get one-on-one time with every one of your students in every math workshop you've ever done? Have you visited every science lab for the equal amount of time every day that you're doing that? And the answer is usually, well, no. But what we do as teachers is we get to as many as we can, but we're tracking that. So I know that I've seen Beth and I've seen Karina today and Shruti and I've seen Carolyn. And so I'm going to make a note of that. So then tomorrow I'm going to go to other people to make sure that by the end of the week, I've made my rounds and I've got a good lens on things. Don't forget that we don't have to see and witness everything that's happening in the classroom. I mean, we need to obviously monitor behavior and all that stuff, but like, you're not going to see every student's moment. So sometimes your lens for their learning is the product they created, their Jamboard, the completed Jamboard, the Google Doc that they submit, the slideshow that they made, whatever the end product is. That might be the only evidence you have of their learning for that day. And then tomorrow, you're going to try to see their process. You're going to try to interact with them in a small group. And over time, you get a well-rounded, complete picture of your student. So I wanted to kind of leave with some of that advice right now. Again, this is a short series. The goal is that we're going to take little bite-sized chunks out of these challenges here. I appreciate everyone who's been sharing things that we're doing. The chat has great ideas as well. And so we'll make sure, and again, I share the chat as well with folks on this. So I want to thank everyone for your time, for joining us today. And I know when I sent the form out and people registered for this, you were able to put your questions in, but you might have more questions right now and you're not able to go back and add those to the form. So feel free to email me. Just know that you can let me go back to camera 1, and this is off. So my contact information is mflynn@mtholyoke.edu. If there's an idea or a question you have that you want to dig into, just shoot me an email. Say, I'd love to hear about this in the next session for the series or something like that. Totally happy to dig in with you all on that. So once again, have a great day, everyone. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and good luck with everything. And enjoy your week. Bye, everyone.